We found a team of woodsmen whose operation runs on horsepower.
The French family is getting a late start this morning. When it's not raining, they usually arrive at the logging site earlier. Much of the morning was spent fixing one of their primary pieces of equipment, Star, a 2,000-pound percheron. He threw a shoe yesterday, so Glenn and his son Lonnie have to nail it back on. For 15 years now, the Frenches have been logging the old-fashioned way. Instead of a cat, they use horses to pull the logs out of the woods, big, strong percherons that are bred for pulling. The Frenches are one of only 5 logging outfits in the state that still use horses. Theirs is entirely a family operation. Glenn's wife Esther works the single horse to yank the logs from the stand. Glenn drives the team, doing much of the yarding, while Lonnie concentrates on falling the trees. It wouldn't pay for a larger outfit to log trees this size. The Miami Corporation, who owns this stand of timber in the Van Duzer corridor, is thinning the crop. It hires the Frenches because the horses have less of an impact on the standing trees.
We're growing good timber this way and not disturbing the standing trees that we're trying to leave. And the key to it is the single horse and the short logs, or, you know, you can long log as long as it'll come out. But that single horse working these short logs into the skid trails is what minimizes the damage to the standing trees.
Glenn is not an ecological purist, he's practical. He believes in what's called mixed power, a combination of both muscle and machinery. A small crawler helps build skid roads and deck logs into a pile, jobs that a cat can do much faster than a horse.
But I don't use it any more than what I really figure I need to, because the more you use equipment, the more it wears out. And where with a horse, the one advantage to them is the more you use them, the broker they get.
Which means the better pullers they become. And the Frenches have some of the best. The woods are no place to work a poorly trained horse. Mistakes can be dangerous, not only for the driver, but for the animal as well. It takes a lot of training to get horses working at this caliber. Training that Glenn says requires an understanding of the difference between terrorizing and educating.
Basically, they're just like little kids. If you treat them like you do a little kid, you get along with them pretty good. You know, you got to teach them a little respect so that they don't just take advantage of you. But if you get after them too much, then you make them resent you, and they don't have any confidence in you. And you got with a machine, like with a crawler, if it can go, it can go, you know, and you can keep going till you run out of fuel. But muscle power's not like that. They get tired and want to rest.
They got in our way there again. What was that?
I say that. Oh, whoa! Listen, it's probably just like more they do around pastures, but some more definitely like, you know, working lots of others back. That gray horse over there, he likes to pull. Gee, he's getting a little old now, but
he is a puller.
Whoa!
I hate to see him get old. He's 15, 16 years old. I mean, it's going to come when he pulls it.
Esther French is one of the few women that horse log with their husbands. She jokes about it being a family picnic in the woods every day. A family that works together stays together. The Frenches are proof of that. A good faller can make a healthy wage working for a big timber company, but Lonnie chooses to stick with the family business.
Oh, I like working with the horses. I like horses, and plus it's kind of nice because Dad knows so much about them, and he's been around for a long time. I can learn a lot from him.
This is one of the things that's hard to learn anymore because the practice of it isn't too widespread like it used to be. They deal with winches and horsepower, but the old time loggers, a lot of times they would work 4 horses in a block on this with the old growth, and it gave them a lot of power. They could move a pretty big log.
This never was and never will be an easy way to make a living. In fact, these days with timber prices low, it's tough to even pay for the hay it takes to keep the horses going. A lot of people would like to believe that Glenn does it because he's a good conservationist. But the main reason is far simpler than that.
I guess there's lots of reasons that are ecological and so on, but the bottom line probably has to be because you like them, and you just well be honest about it. And so I just tell people that, well, I wouldn't care to a point. I'd be just like the equipment loggers. It might, even if it were more damaging, I'd still do it anyway because I like it. Come right back in there. Just the reach on those alligators don't reach that top.
Yeah, look at that.
Actually starting to settle down at
That's so thick right there.
Yeah. Putting on much hair, you know that?
Well, they can eat your brains and make
Not till it gets bald.
Huh?
Well, will they?
No, they're Persian. The other 2 are Persians. The one we'll take together.
Well, sure don't. Normally you can't do it that way.
What color is it?
Well, yeah.
Black.
One star. Come on, baby.
Right.
Yeah.
And he gets
Broke horse.
Now, did you trade them?
Maybe
Yeah,
this is where you could be better for them. Why don't you try it?
Try what? Picking that
From behind me and you step right in. You hold it and then I'll
What was the other horse in Vancouver?
I don't know which one you're talking
Jim's other horse,
Oh, Maxie?
Maxie. You broke her, and you broke Toby from Canby, Jack and Jigs from Canby, and Holly from Dallas. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your Patriot. Yeah.
Oh, oh.
What's the? No, one.
Are Clydesdales bigger than the Bertrams?
It depends. Belgians.
That'd work a little better if they had better teeth.
Tell you what, I can't remember. Take one person to do that. Living here.
No.
Have you ever been on one?
Pretty good bird.
We got a video of us
You're what? She's got that little outfit to put her on.
Yes, we were shut down one day, 2 days later they called us and said, "Oh, we want to talk." And then,
Did they let you first
yeah, we could yard where the horses were. We could yard. We could yard them. In last year, we got a 2 or 3 weeks.
On there that seals the moisture and stuff. And when you do what I'm doing right here, you're taking it all off. But
You kind of got to do it here, right?
yeah, so that's why though you don't just go clear up and then taper and clear in.
Well, he went to...
Better just to dub it through. Well, it don't look as good, but it's practical.
So you would do it quite that way then? Or?
Well, so, I wouldn't shoot for a show. Doing things for looks that are not good for the horse. Looks good on me good than that. Actually, if you had a hard horse to shoe, you can just leave it.
No.
Well, that's probably your best side, huh?
Well, no, I'll get half this straight, but this part here is what they're interested in. If this, lots of times they want the long, leggy horses. You see these horses pulling the wagons, and they're a real tall, leggy horse. Okay, and but for a pulling horse, my Star, quit. They like that shorter area right there, so it gives them a better pulling leverage.
Now, what kind of horse is Star?
Percheron.
And she's registered.
She's a registered horse from France, and she's 5 years. No, she's 10 years old.
Okay. Lester, if I can have you move over just
Okay.
a little bit more. Right
You're
there.
gonna have me front side.
There you go. And just turn your left shoulder in towards the camera right now. Just take it. There you go. Just like that. That's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah, Esther, why do you use these horses? You got Percherons or just Percherons?
There's Belgians, Clydesdales, Percherons, Shire, and Suffolks, which there's not too many Shires and Suffolks in Oregon. There's a few, but we like the Percherons for their agility, and we feel they get around the woods a lot better. And, some people like Belgians, but we prefer the Percherons.
They're big horses.
Right.
Is it hard working with them? Or?
Well, you train them and let them think that you're bigger than they are. You don't let them think that they've got all that strength that they have. And we usually try to start them when they're 2, 4 years old, putting the harness on them and just working with them, keeping them real gentle. And we don't have any horses that we work with that are cantankerous or that we have to be afraid of that they're going to kick. They're all real. The boy, this Lonnie, when he was 6, 8 years old and so on, he was climbing on their backs and sliding off them and so on. And so we keep them gentle. And my husband's got a lot of tricks that he uses to let them know that he's bigger than they are.
And you've been doing it for a while then?
15 years, yeah.
How'd you get into it? I can ask. I'll probably ask Glenn all these questions too.
Yeah, ask him. Because he gives a lot of personal touch to it. Well, he was going to horseshoeing school in Grants Pass, and there was an old fellow, Ira Bronson, that was plowing with some draft horses there, and he got to talking with him, and so Glenn was going to do their shoeing, and he was going to teach my husband horse logging.
And you you drive a team then?
I drive a single now. At one time I drove a team, but I use a single and get the logs out of the stand, take them to a main skid trail, and then he uses a team and takes them into the
You know, you'd be great on What's My Line.
Yeah, right.
What do you do when people say, well, what do you do, Esther? You're
Well, I watch their faces because it's funny to see them, their reaction. There's probably only 2 or 3 of us wives in the state of Oregon that log with their husbands, and it's a family operation is what it is.
How many teams are there in Oregon? You know, or?
I don't know. At one time there was about 50 horse loggers, but there's only probably 5 that are logging now. There's just the drop in the log prices is such that they can't afford to. With the horses, you don't get the production out that you do with the equipment. But then you don't have the $1,000 equipment payments either, and your horses don't break down as much as the equipment does. And so, Star, get over. Star.
That's
Star, get over. See, little things like that is training them to get over. That horse that's in the corral, you can tell him that, and he doesn't do anything. Just stands there and looks at you.
Go over, Start. Go over.
We got this.
yeah. We got all day.
This is the collar that's going on, and there's a collar pad underneath it. The collar has to fit just right, or they can get collar sore. Their shoulders get sore. And if it's too big, they won't pull right. If it's too tight, they won't pull right. So sometimes you have to put a collar pad in there to take up that little slack.
Do they like to pull? Are they sort of like sled dogs, or they like to get in the harness?
I guess, basically. I mean, I don't know. They've never said they didn't like it. We did have one horse that, he was forever going down the trail. He did not like, if you want to say a horse doesn't like to pull, he didn't like to.
They don't go into the barn and get their harness and bring it.
Right, no,
say, "Let's
not
go out on the
exactly.
lawn."
Didn't know what you were going to do.
Start.
He had one horse jump over it. Went right
Start. Oh. Get over. Get over. Whoa. Get over. Get over, Star. Oh. Okay, I think that's it. Oh. Star, take it easy, huh? I can go get him? Yeah.
Well, why don't you put her in and then we'll get making
Yes. Okay, we're gonna look.
Well, I had some what they call Bell's palsy. It's a paralysis of your face, and I'm still not totally over it. And so this side isn't as it doesn't have the strength and the actually you're used to your face operating together, and you don't think that it's really not the same nerve, but you got one nerve here and one nerve here. Well, this one got in trouble, and so this side just sags. And
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't probably. I was just kind of halfway kidding.
What I'll do is have you turn a little bit, turn your left shoulder. There we go, just like that, and then you'll be talking to Dave. So.
Pretty. What are those?
Fuchsias.
Fuchsias.
Quite often they plant them in a pot and hang them, but
Glenn, how do you spell your last name? Just it's French, right? F-R-E-N-C-H?
Right. Just like the language.
Just like the language.
Yeah.
First, why do now you've been doing this for how long?
Since '73, however many, that'd be what, 15 or 16 years.
How'd you get into it?
Well, my grandparents actually had horses, draft horses, and when I was growing up I used to ride them, but they were dead and retired by the time I got old enough to actually work them, but I always kind of remembered them, you know, and eventually I grew up and got educated and had it after I'd gotten kind of settled down. I got kind of a chance to get some horses again, and so one thing led to another, and start off with one horse and end up with 4 or 5.
Now, why would you still use horses today? I mean, why not take the money and buy a tractor?
Well, most guys probably obviously have done that, and I guess there's lots of reasons that are ecological and so on, but the bottom line probably has to be because you like them and you just well be honest about it. And so I just tell people that, well, I wouldn't care to a point. I'd be just like the equipment loggers. It might, even if it were more damaging, I'd still do it anyway because I like it. And so it is, though, basically when you're trying to sell yourself you know, which is what you have to do. Anybody has to kind of sell themselves to get a job. Why then you do it from the ecological standpoint, that it is easier on the ground and it's easier on the stand that you leave. So that's, you know, from as far as methods of logging, it's one of the gentler, easier on the land ways of doing it.
And has business been pretty good for you recently? And are people looking for that service?
Well, I happen to be fortunate in that I work for a large landowner, and so I have steady work. Actually, they tell me the rest of my life, as long as I can get along with them. But hasn't always been true, and it isn't true for a lot of fellas. They have to go out and look for job to job, and consequently, over the last been 7 or 8 years during the recessionary times here, we went from about 79 to about 50 horse loggers in the state down to about 5 to 7 of us who are actually active. And part of the reason I've survived is because the people that I work for take a real long-range view of their management, and so they're not looking, they don't want to lose any money, but they're not looking, well, today am I getting rich? It's long-term, and they realize that its stand improvement has a lot of value, but it's a long-term value. So if you had 20 acres, and you know, you would have to look at it probably from a little shorter perspective, and it would either have to generate you money now, or you'd rather let it set until it did. And consequently, it's been hard for a lot of fellows to find work. As the delivered prices of logs have fell, it squeezed out the logging. And so that's kind of what's happened to a lot of loggers, not just horse loggers. But
now, who do you work for?
The name of the company is Miami Corporation, and they own 27,000 acres up and down the corridor area here. But what they are is the old McCormick Deering family, and they have this corporation that all of the descendants that are involved in it hold the stock in it, and so that's really who they are.
Now, is it cheaper to own a Percheron, to maintain a Percheron, as opposed to maintaining a cattle?
Well,
or what are the advantages and disadvantages? Let's put it that way. When you get up in the morning, would you rather just turn a key, or?
Yeah. Well, the problem is, and why, of course, that people over the years have switched to equipment is because of the convenience of it. You can get up and eat your breakfast and jump in your rig and go turn a key on and go to work for 10 hours and jump off and come home. Where with the horses, to get 10 hours in, actually, I would have to work about 14. So, because you have to get up in the morning, you feed them, and then you go in and you eat, and then you come back out and water them and feed them some more, and then you have to go do something else, and then eventually they get done, and you have to harness them and load them and haul them, and so that ties up the better part of 3 hours anyway of your day that a cataloger would put into production. And so by the hour he outproduces me a little bit, but depending on how big his crawler is, of course, but he also is able to get in more hours of production during the day, and so there is that trade-off, and so that's why I say you kind of have to like the horses to be willing to do that. And a lot of people really didn't like the horses that well. It was just a way of doing things, and when a better way to their mind came along, why, they went with it. But one of the things I've observed, and I have a crawler, and I actually
16, I think you're referring to as would be half inch.
I don't know.
It's about like this.
Yeah. I see.
This is wider. It's just.
And what's it do? Give you better resolution?
Yeah, it gives you a better resolution. Mm-hmm. It gives you about, probably about lines of resolution and a half-inch camera. About.
What I actually believe in what's called mixed power, and so I use equipment to where it definitely has an advantage to it, and like in the clearing of the skid roads and with the blade work and things like that, you can do a lot of that by hand, but it takes so long. And in the decking of the logs, you can do that with the horses too, but what happens to you is that the time it takes you to deck a log, you could be yarding another one, and so instead of your decking cost being like a third of your logging cost, it ends up being half of it. Mm-hmm. And so since I've got the blade there for, you know, to facilitate actually, but I don't use it any more than what I really figure I need to, because the more you use equipment, the more it wears out. And where with a horse, the one advantage to them is the more you use them, the broker they get. And they have actually about twice the what do you want to call it, the lifespan, or the usable lifespan is about twice. So with a horse, the more you stand him around and feed him, the less return you're getting on your investment. Where a crawler, you can just park it and yeah, it deteriorates a little, but not too much, you know, and it's the use really that wears them out. So you've got to be careful that in the using against the wearing out, you're actually doing something and not just wasting it. And so that's my personal philosophy. Not everybody, of course, comes from that. Some guys are just what you may call dyed-in-the-wool horse loggers, and they won't have nothing else. You know, it's just the horses and a chainsaw, and they get by, and they're happy too, I guess. But I just prefer to do it this way.
Block and line this summer.
Yeah, a lot.
What's decking with block and line?
Well,
We're pretty much done. I think we can get the
Okay.
rest sort of as we go.
Okay.
Oh wow. Back star. Back. A little rear end with them going back. 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 Yeah, I got another horse, so I'll go get him.
very far. It's inch plywood plus the metal of it. When we started out, the first 3 years, we kept picking up. Lonnie was 4 years old, and Eric was 8. We had a 17-foot yeah, it was. No, I don't miss them, but they were interesting to go through.
You got gloves and stuff?
Go through the stock truck.
got all the
Straws in there. What?
Got everything in there.
Well, I got the water, the hay, I gotta get some drinks. Gotta get the whole dog. Come on, Mandy. Take that. Well, the horse is Mandy. Come here. Get off the horse's grain. This is her grain too. She likes the grain. We take the grain and the hay because they get hungry too, and they get a little antsy when they get hungry and they're having to work, and they don't want to wait that long for you to hook them up and so on. And they 5 o'clock. We had one horse at 5 o'clock. He went to the truck. I don't know, just like he had his watch on.
What do you guys? And you give me that line again about the picnic.
Oh, we get to have a picnic in the woods every day, rain or shine.
try to get a bite with them.
They don't go too far. Here, Hall.
Glenda, the horses like logging.
Oh, they're kind of like most people. They'd rather run loose in pasture, but some horses definitely like to work
I think
better than others.
They got in our way there again. What was that?
I say that. Whoa, whoa! Listen, right. They're probably just like most of us. They'd rather run loose in pasture, but some horses definitely like, you know, working a lot less than others. Back, that gray horse over there, he likes to pull. Gee, he's getting a little old now, but whoa, whoa. Whoa, I need you to shut up. Whoa! Alright. But they don't mind. They don't work too hard.
You want a 37 out of this? You can get it out, but I don't know if you can turn it that well. Yeah.
Bee climbing on my finger and started to do this.
I was about to tell you that you want your music.
Well, I don't know.
Either don't expect enough of them, so they don't really get anything done, they just kind of baby and pamper them along, or they expect too much of them, and then maybe they'll get after them, and the most common mistake is to think that, well, since they're pulling it, that they can go on with it. And so maybe if they've got a pretty heavy turn and they're ready for a rest, so then a guy will come on, you know, gotta get logs a little in. And so then he works them until they're tired enough they'll stop anyway. And then if he gets after them, yeah, they'll go on a few times, but then if you keep that up, the first thing you know, they won't go, and then they'll kick when you get after them a little bit, and you make them balky and kickers, see. So the trick is to know, and it comes from experience and good experience, I guess, is to know what they can do so that you don't ask them to do too much and discourage them, and then they get to where, yeah, they don't like to work because they don't have any confidence in you, see.
They're no difference in humans in that respect.
Basically, they're just like little kids. If you treat them like you do a little kid, you get along with them pretty good, you know. You got to teach them a little respect so that they don't just take advantage of you, but if you get after them too much, then you make them resent you, and they don't have any confidence in you. And you gotta, with a machine like with a crawler, if it can go, it can go, you know, and you can keep going till you run out of fuel, but muscle power is not like that. They get tired and want to rest. But because I'm close and she's back there in the longer yard and getting me turns, I'm just taking them as I come to them. But the point is that's not a very heavy log to teach. You wouldn't want to go any distance with it because you'd be losing too much weight. Whoa, whoa. Yeah, there's a couple of rules. Okay, whoa, is you always stay to the uphill side of the log and I won't get in trouble.
Okay, I'm just going to follow you.
Okay. Now that's all I can comfortably get through there.
Sit.
Just pulling. But if you notice, they got the horses are hooked up to a.
Yeah, come here, Hawk. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it just shows that he knows how to pull. Just the anxiousness is what causes he likes to do.
Back down that way, I've got a couple that got to come out of the stand. Getting them out of the tight spots is what's...
Now this horse really likes to pull, huh?
He does. He is a puller. I hate to see him get old, but he's 15, 16 years old, and I mean, it's going to come when he pulls it. He's just...
He looks pretty dead right now. How's that?
Hasn't worked yet. But now you've been doing this. I mean, your mom was saying you guys lived out in the woods. You know, when you were 4. I mean, you've been doing this since.
I've been around it for that long, but it wasn't until like 3rd grade that I actually started driving the horses and stuff and working in the woods. I was just go for this, go for that.
You must have been pretty small driving those big horses.
Yeah, we had an older horse. He was about 20 years older. It's about as old as they live. And he was really slow, and he practically worked himself, and so I worked him. Me and my brother worked him more.
Well, you plan to stay with the business then?
Yeah, I'd like to. I kind of like to fall timber a lot, and so that's what I'd like to do, is work with Dad doing that.
Work with the horses? You don't want to move to some bigger operation?
No, not too much. It's pretty easy going. It's, working with Dad is kind of set your own hours, and I can always say, I got to go, take off for a day, and tell him a little ahead of time, and I could do that, where with another bigger operation, it wouldn't be so easy.
And how do you like working with the horses?
Oh, I like working with the horses. I like horses, and plus it's kind of nice because Dad knows so much about them, and he's been around for a long time, that I can learn a lot from him too still.
Come on, Jerry. Oh. He's really a unique horse. I hate to see him retire, but he's a good.
Yeah, maybe when we get up there, we take a picture. See how good he is.
Yeah. Come on, Jerry. But he doesn't like to go back to the woods. He finds every piece of green grass and moss and ferns and every hole to go into. Oh, Dad brought the cat in here and he messed me up. Come on, Jerry.